Ladies and gentlemen, this panel discussion is going to center around the CEO's ESG dilemma, balancing real progress with investor skepticism. To begin, I'd like to start off by inviting the moderator for this panel to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Rajashri Ivaturi, partner Ipsos Strategy 3. A round of applause, please. And keep that applause coming for our esteemed panelist, Nilesh Kaul, Senior President, Aluminium Downstream, Hindalco Industries. Make some noise, please, ladies and gentlemen. Keep that applause going for Shayak Chatterjee, co-founder, Breathe ESG. Vivek Abrol, Chief Executive Officer, RR Cable. And Vijay Nirani, founder and managing director, True Alt Bioenergy, our title partner. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause, please, as they take the stage. I'm handing the stage over to you.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone, to this panel discussion. I have the four panelists here with me. Today, we're discussing something which is very, very important for the corporate world on how do you balance your ESG goals with investor skepticism. You know, I don't envy the business leaders today because they have to actually traverse a delicate balance navigating the various sustainable goals they have on ESG while they manage the concerns of the investors who often prioritize short-term returns. You know, the other dilemma that gets compounded here is that they have to report tangible outcomes from a financial perspective, but the challenge is how do you stay true to your ESG goals? Because these goals are often in line with the core values of the firm and they are built around the long-term strategy. I think the issue here is how do you balance your ESG initiatives as well as create shareholder value? So I'll open the floor by asking you all, what is the single biggest challenge in your industry from an ESG perspective? So Nilesh, do you want to take that first, please?
I think you mentioned the word challenge, and of course we all know that we have lots of challenges in meeting ESG requirements of the world as we go forward. But at Hindalco, we also look at it as an opportunity. I think it helps that the products and solutions that we manufacture and market are part of the new sustainable economy. For example, aluminum and copper have a significant role in the new solutions which will allow us to decarbonize, which will allow us to create low energy solutions. At the same time, I think our investors, like us, and other stakeholders, like the community that we work with, or the people who we employ, all of them are not giving us a choice. I think it's about ensuring that growth and ESG go together, hand in hand. And our approach to all of this is actually, at Hindalco, we believe our strategy has to be about addressing the people, the planet, and prosperity all in one go. Now, coming back to your one single challenge, I think the one challenge I would identify for our industry and the wider ecosystem is a mindset shift, which shows that ESG is a team sport. Individual companies optimizing their own ESG scores will take us further, but industries working across each other, I think, is the route for us to go. For example, we work with the automotive industry to lightweight their cars, which obviously makes them more fuel efficient and more sustainable. With the packaging industry, we bring new solutions there as well. So I think the challenge is how do industries work across each other to address the ESG goals together rather than just optimizing their own pieces.
Yeah, that's a very nice point that you made about a team sport, because I think the next question, again, I mean, I'll leave it to Shayak to respond to the open-ended question, but the thing is, you know, we're only talking about corporates, but then you have the entire SME sector also, which contributes to the Indian economy. So how do we bring them on to this ESG platform that we're talking about? So Shayak, your thoughts?
Sure. I think as a technology and a service provider, our perspective is quite different. The biggest challenge that leaders seek out to solve with us is the ability to subvert the short-term financial pressures that you mentioned. And how that takes place is by showing the quantifiable impact of sustainability. First of all, quantifying what sustainability means itself, right? Being able to transparently demonstrate that to all your stakeholders, and building investor confidence by also tying it to financial metrics. So this includes obviously cost savings from energy efficiency, use less energy, emit less, first principles, but revenue from sustainable products, right? Quantifying the climate risk that you're mitigating as a result of adopting sustainable practices. And finally, I think it requires an adoption of ESG into the core strategy of an organization. I think a lot of times, right, we see it as a checkbook compliance, especially in new markets where people have this alien concept that has been thrust upon them, especially in the last 5 years. But if we view ESG as a guiding principle towards our overall corporate strategy, making sure that the incentives are aligned with the growth, which is our core business, that is a challenge which we've been helping companies solve, because finally technology and data lies at the core of all of this. Once you have data, which is the new oil, and we're moving away from oil, thankfully, right, that takes you forward. So I think that is the major challenge that we've seen as a technology vendor.
Thank you, Shaik. Vivek?
Yeah, just coming straight to the question you asked, I think one of the biggest challenges what I see is the deployment consistency of ESG. What I mean by that is not the awareness issue, because most of the companies now know about ESG and the sustainability. In fact, one of the earlier speakers were also talking about it. But I think it's about what value you put on ESG, and whether does that value justify the shareholder value. I think that is one of the awareness, because there are not many quantified examples of what ESG can bring value to the shareholder value, right? And therefore it becomes a challenge from an organization perspective to really go and maintain that consistency. And I'm not saying that companies are not doing it, companies are following that, but it's just followed as a guideline rather than, you know, something which is voluntarily kind of placed there. So that's how I see it.
What about you, Vijay? What are your thoughts on this?
I see this as a very big opportunity, right? So, us being True All Bioenergy, we are literally in the energy space, right? And we come from a very traditional business, that's sugarcane, farming, agriculture, agrarian economy. We have access to one of the biggest sources of feedstock and raw material. We have phenomenal weather, the climatic condition. There's a big market available for us in terms of our population. And thanks to our government and the policymakers, today we have such wonderful policies that we are allowed to convert a lot of our existing potentials into products and then make them into a profitable business venture. And this has given birth to many companies like True All Bioenergy, right? A company like ours, or the sector that we are in, is growing at a rapid 18% CAGR, right? And Government of India had taken certain targets. So just to touch on opportunities. For example, the ethanol blended with petrol program, where they're solving multiple problems by cutting down dependency on import, increasing sustainable fuel, cutting down on fossil emissions, ensuring green, circular, net zero or a carbon neutral energy consumption. So all this is happening only because we have a wonderful policy in place. So for companies like us, we are in a phenomenal phase, in a phenomenal period of time. And I think I don't see any challenges per se. We have a lot of opportunities. The only thing that we are, I mean, the challenge, if you ask me what is we really need to do a lot more, and there is opportunity for us to do a lot more.
Yeah, so it's interesting how both of you all talked about, all of you all talked about, opportunities. I mean, it's probably, it also senses a lot of optimism. So coming back to you, Nilesh, in the aluminum sector or metals per se, what do you think should be done in terms of ESG, right? Going beyond the environment, we're also talking about social, we're talking about outcome reporting. What are the sort of action points that you are looking at, and what can be done there?
I think at Hindalco, we operate across the entire value chain, right from mining to smelting to fabrication and then recycling as well. The approach we have taken is, number one is transparency. So we report our ESG footprint very regularly in an integrated report every year, which combines actually business and sustainability together. Then we have initiatives across all the challenges that we are confronted with. For example, decarbonization is a clear one which everybody talks about. But I'd like to talk about a few other initiatives, which is, for example, solid waste disposal. Aluminium is a sector where a lot of solid waste bauxite residue gets created in the process. So we have actually invested in collaborating with the cement industry, with different various industries to get this byproduct, which otherwise used to get into landfills. How can we use that for as an ingredient in cement, for example? Therefore, you're avoiding all of this landfills being created. We're investing a significant amount in recycling of products. So that's another approach to reduce the CO2 emission, as well as what the earlier speaker was talking about, material going into landfills. And I think the last one is about, we believe we can be a catalyst for other industries to become sustainable as well. So people are talking about EVs, for example. Now, those need batteries. So we have gone ahead and went ahead and invested in battery foil manufacturing facilities. Likewise, in EVs, providing lightweight solutions for them. Packaging, we are investing in designing new packages which can be both reused as well as recycled. So it's a lot of actions within the factory gate, but a lot more actions outside the factory gate, where we are collaborating with other industries to create sustainable buildings which are eco-friendly over the life cycle of the products. So a lot of investment happening. And last but not the least, we are putting our money where our mouth is. When we are looking at increasing our smelting capacity, we have made it now very open for the last few years that we'll only do it with green power. And we have already started. It's difficult to do that with smelting because it requires continuous power, but we are experimenting and figuring out green solutions for that as well.
It's an amazing insight into what you all do. I mean, I think probably I don't know whether all the BRSR reporting captures all of that, but Nilesh, the other question is, does it put a lot of pressure on ROIs? I mean, I'm sure that must be one of those measures as well.
Oh, it is, but again, managements are paid to balance. So we have to balance the long term and we have to balance the short term. And our investors are very clear. You can't have a sustainable tomorrow if you're not delivering value today. So it's a question of balancing both those out. But our investors do reward us when we do have initiatives like, let's say, working on electric buses and supporting logistics, which is green. Our investors are very, very keen to understand that. And last but not the least, our customer base also expects us to demonstrate sustainability. So it's, when they're associating with a brand like Hindalco, which is rated for the last 4 years as one of the leaders in the DGSAI index, that gives us access to more customers who are willing to work with us as well. So I think on balance, it's a positive for us.
That's great to hear. So taking on from that point, Shayak, I mean, Nilesh mentioned it's a team sport. So what are the issues or let's say challenges that you face when you're looking at data reporting and also the data quality and the provenance of data? And what is the issue that you see for scope 2 and scope 3 reporting as well? Because, we're talking about team sport and you're talking about, the entire ecosystem working towards it. So your take on that?
So I have to acknowledge the importance of data quality and transparency when it comes to ESG, because that is the bedrock upon which this construct can go forward and make a tangible change. Otherwise, it's just a combination of 3 letters. Specifically, when we're talking about how to improve that and what the pathway forward, it is technology. It is what our core focus and the work that we've done, most of the work that we've done is around making sure that how do we make this data audit ready while making as simple to collect as possible, because the people and the data generation happening at source, right? There is so much work to be done that you cannot burden these guys, right? You cannot burden the source of data generation with another set of hoops to crawl through. So technology is the way to make that process seamless. Coming to your second question about emissions specifically, scope 2 emissions are actually the easiest to calculate. They are the acquired energy emissions. So scope 1 emissions are for your direct energy consumption. That would be your boilers, diesel, coal, right? Fuel used in transport, refrigerant leakage. Scope 2 is simply electricity you purchase from the grid. But scope 3 is a nebulous web. We've had to, we've had to develop proprietary algorithms, right, that help companies because in an ideal world, every supplier would tell you the emissions and the life cycle assessment of their products, but we don't live in an ideal world. So we've actually had to build algorithms that take spends from your ERP systems, right, and your procurement data, and actually abstract that spend into quantity figures, convert that down to mass, take that mass into energy, and figure out emissions just for one category, because scope 3 covers your entire value chain. So it's not only your purchased goods and services, but the waste that you're generating, right? Your downstream leased assets that you own, as well as business travel. In the case like a McKinsey cannot say, that I have no emissions, because there are emissions that are caused in the servicing of your product, in your operations, in the sale of your product. So scope 3 is definitely somewhere where we've really had to see innovation driving it forward. That's where a startup can really help corporates, because we have that agility and we have that driven focus to just solve this one problem. And it is very difficult for a large organization to have to do it in-house as well as all of their day-to-day tasks. So this is somewhere where definitely is a large challenge.
Yeah, so probably I think since we've sort of established, we've reached a maturity level as far as scope 1 is concerned, probably scope 3 is something where probably the country will see a lot of work happening and maybe startups like yours. So Vivek, moving on to you, in the FMEG business that you drive, a lot of your products use copper and, you have polymer as well. Now, they're not, of course, environment friendly, and we're talking about rare metals. Now, how do you actually balance the growth that has to come from scale versus your ESG initiatives? Because some of these products have to get recycled and, reused. So how do you actually trade that off, the growth versus the ESG?
Yeah, very interesting question. I just refer back to what Nilesh said, which was on the mindset. I think the first step itself is about making the mindset that ESG is not a sideline business, but a part of the integrated story of your strategy, right? That's the first step, that which we are already committed. The second step is, how do you start making baby steps? You can't reach to the end just by making a large jump, right? So you got to take baby steps. So how we see and how I see in my organization is, how can ESG, as part of the strategy of the overall organization, add value to the consumer? Because I'm in the consumer business. I'll give you an example. So fans, we are in the manufacturing and selling of fans as a category. Now, fans as a category, as per the BE guidelines, all fans across the industry have to be more star rated now. 1, 2, 3, 5, the way you have refrigerators and all. We just got into this regime last year. Now, the fifth 5-star fan is more technology driven. It's called a BLDC fan, right? Which most of the players have it. We went to an extra mile and we said, how do we add value not only from the product side, because it's more sustainable fan, more energy efficient fan. How do I add value through bringing a packaging which is much more greener, right? So therefore, for example, in the box where the fan is placed, I have moved thermocol and replaced it with pulp. Synthetic inks to natural inks. So made the whole package as more sustainable. But when the consumer looks at it, he sees the value, right? So, and therefore there is, always be a segment of consumer which would drive more environment-friendly products, going to pay a little extra because of that. And I think that we have tested out, it's working. So I truly believe that ESG is just not a concept, it's a very integrated part. And obviously you are changing and influencing positively across the ESG parameters, but you're also adding a lot of value to the consumer, which he's ready to pay. That's what my take is.
Thank you so much. So Vijay, the other question to you, right, following on from that same thing, we talk about biofuels. Of course, I mean, they're the best, right, as far as planet is concerned. I mean, they're the most beneficial. But the returns are really going to be long term. So how do you manage that? And do you see biofuels becoming mainstream? And of course, government definitely has a role to play here. So, but how do you manage that? You're talking about long-term returns from an investment perspective, but that's the best thing for our planet. So what's your view?
That's exactly what we thought before we began our business, right? We thought, is it going to be sustainable to our bottom line? But trust me, the interesting learning that we got is, your bottom line is much better when you try to be sustainable. I'll give you examples. I can support my statement with that, right? So leaving aside the biofuel business, I'll just take a very typical high polluted industry like a cement industry. We run a small cement plant, right? Of course, it has a little capex involved. We converted our traditional kilns with the renewable power, right, with windmills. So we replaced our power imports or our WHR boilers into wind power. Earlier, the import of power or whatever generation cost of power was somewhere about 6 to 7 rupees a unit. To now, wind is giving us a cost of power at about 2.5 rupees a unit. So there is a huge, and if you look at the long-term and short-term gains, if you look at capex and opex benefits, there is a huge, huge benefit, right? Leaving aside traditional industry, coming back to biofuels. Now, the integration of biofuels is so beautiful that, especially the industry that we are in, we are all hydrocarbons, right? So hydrocarbons can be converted into anything, right? From H1 to C14H14. There are various products, methanol, ethanol, isobutanol, then aviation fuel, then compressed biogas, methane. It's a whole beautiful, beautiful, I mean, it's like a Disneyland to just identify these items if you are technically inclined towards finding out more products, right? And all of these products, when integrated, that's the key word, right? Bringing in the right integration in place, having the right set of technology in place gives you the best bottom line. And again, there is a very big market already available, be it in India or be it globally. There are a lot of people, again, integration becomes key. If we integrate our produce to the market, we end up becoming much, much, profitable. So that's the whole point.
That's really heartening, probably. I think, there is a lot of misconceptions, right? I mean, like you said, till you got into the business, you didn't really know that it could be that profitable. So I think there are a lot of misconceptions, and probably there needs to be an increased awareness of how, biofuels can be a sustainable venture. I mean, this is such an interesting discussion, but I will come to close with a last question to all of you all, is what is the single call for action in your sector which can help you, follow the ESG goals, implement the ESG goals, as well as, ensure that there are good returns?
I think I'll go back to the original point of which I was making, which is it has to be a team sport. It cannot be we optimize just aluminium or do reverse and say, you know what, aluminium is carbon intensive and therefore we should not be using aluminium. You have to look at the ecosystem. You have to look at life cycle based thinking and an approach, as I again said, to look at it from the point of view of we have to think about people, we have to think about the planet, and we have to think about prosperity as well. So if we balance all of those, I think I'm very, very optimistic about where we are going.
I believe we have to plant the seeds for the trees of the future. One call of action or something I would preach to those in the audience is patience, right? It is important to realize that ESG is a long-term value driver, and more than that, it is a collective responsibility. As corporates, as business leaders, it is on us now to start this transition. We will see it in the consumer in the future. This is a much larger change, and it's important to have that patience. We need to step away from the short term when it comes to ESG.
Vivek, what are your takes?
Yeah, I would say, see, the debate is not here to be or not to be, right? We all know that we got to do ESG, but I think if I can deconstruct, we all know what ESG stands for, but if you can interestingly deconstruct ESG as first E, which is the execution at all layers, right? S, the standardization, right? Standardization across the industry, across the framework, and G being the government framework. If we can have this part of definition in our head and start implementing it, I think that makes the task easier and smoother for all the corporates as they go along. Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Vijay?
I think Mr. Vivek put it absolutely on point there. Yeah. So I don't want to come out as overly, positive on the ESG front and all of these. Of course, there are challenges to any technology and any integration, right? So the whole objective is how committed we all are as a community. So as long as we end up being committed to the goals, we don't keep diverting every 4 steps we take, right? So that is how we end up achieving goals. So I would say commitment is an important aspect.
So it's been such an insightful learning for me, honestly. I mean, sitting here with you all, I think I got nuggets from all of you all. So one is definitely, I think it is long-term, right? Impact is always long-term, outcome is short-term. We often misuse, the words being saying we create impact, but I think impact is something that we will probably see going down the line. And I also like the fact that you talked about, the execution and, this entire framework of ESG. Rethink it because it's not a single player play. It's that everybody. So on this note, I would like to just add that in a country like ours, which is developing, scale and growth are imperative. And it is important for us to actually balance, right? People, planet, and as Nilesh said, we also have to look at prosperity of business and society. Thank you so much for your time, gentlemen. It was really wonderful. I know we come to a conclusion on this panel, but I'm sure the conversation on ESG will continue. Thank you once again. Good evening.
Thank you so much.